Hi, my name is Angela Casey and welcome to Edinburgh Outdoors, a podcast exploring Edinburgh's green spaces and the people in them. My latest podcast focuses on railway lines that have become, or should become, cycle and walkways. I met up with researcher and writer Charlie Ellis, who took me off to discover some hidden paths and railway tracks in North Edinburgh. We started behind Aldi in Gorgie, enjoyed a chat in Saughton Park, and then we headed off to St Mark's Park in Broughton. While there we went to see the Powderhall Line with its tracks still intact. The line closed in 2016 and there's a campaign to get it joined into Edinburgh's Northern Path network, providing a link through to Meadowbank. Today we're out in Gorgie, which is just outside the city centre, and it's a busy area. We're finding some hidden paths with researcher, writer and EFL teacher Charlie Ellis. So welcome to Edinburgh Outdoors, Charlie.
Hi.
Hi, it's very nice to meet you. So we're around the back of Aldi and we have walked up a pavement and we found a path down here, and Charlie's telling me that it used to be a railway path. Should we walk down a bit and have a look at it, because it looks quite nice. So how did you originally find this path actually?
I'm often looking for just quiet routes. I already had an interest in railway paths, but it just shows that Gorgie is stuffed full of railway paths, just showing, heavily industrial area. All these little places for freight and goods.
And we're now sitting in a really fantastic garden called Saughton Park, and there's some renovated gardens here. There's some kids playing in the background, and we're looking at some lovely clipped hedges and flowers, and it's really nice and very peaceful and sunny on a nice October day. So, Charlie, we've just been walking down a track that you've discovered. What's the background to your, would you call it a hobby?
I suppose. I think the background is that it's part of my childhood. My parents were keen walkers and explorers of interesting places, both interested in natural environment, built environment, all this sort of stuff. So I don't recall a time when I didn't go out walking. I enjoy the exercise, refreshing your mind, all that sort of aspect. But I suppose as a conscious thing of discovering hidden places, that's a more recent thing.
Is it because you're in a city and you're trying to get away from the main bits, do you think?
Definitely. At the centre of Edinburgh these days, people talk about over-tourism and the congested nature of certain, pinch points in the city. So I'm always looking for, quiet ways of avoiding the real
avoiding
busyness.
That noisy child. He's very loud. Definitely a nice walk. We can't complain. I think it's half term for some of them, isn't it? I guess finding those paths that used to be railways, it's part of discovering the former industry of the city and looking at how the city's changed, isn't it?
Absolutely. In some ways it shows sort of Edinburgh's character in the past, and the industrial aspect of the city. There's still fragments of it. I think coming here today I was on the 22 bus, which takes you along the West Approach Road, which obviously was a railway in the past, but then you overlook bits of industry, distilleries and so on that still persist. Although I suppose the image of the city as a genteel place, a tourist place, a historic place.
We were talking about some of the other railway tracks, and there must have been quite a lot of them wiggling all over the city, these railways, weren't they? Just quite interesting. And it's great that they're now becoming footpaths.
I feel it's like a gift from the past to the present. It's something that's no longer used, has survived. I think around the mid-80s the decision was made to transform them into public footpaths, and tarmac them properly and so on. I'm sure they'd been used unofficially before that. To me it's just like a fantastic asset to the city.
So, born and bred Edinburgh, is that right?
Yes.
And how long have you been seeking out hidden paths? When did you start doing that?
I suppose consciously doing it as the last 6, 7, 8 years. I moved from the south side of the city, where there are some interesting parts, but on the north side you've got that particular dense network of the North Edinburgh Path network, and being close to that and being able to explore it in depth has really led me to sort of, from that, seek out other places. Here we're not far from the Water of Leith, so we've got that connection. We've got other paths towards Corstorphine, past through Ball Green.
So tell me about your writing, because you've been doing some writing for local websites and papers, haven't you? How did you get into doing that?
So I think for the last 4 or 5 years I've done quite a lot of writing, different types. So I do academic writing related to my work, professional magazines and so on. A couple of years ago, I got involved in a creative writing group, and through them, I was sort of encouraged by them to sort of let go a bit. When I discussed with them that and they knew I was interested in these paths, and they said, well, write about that. And with those, I've sort of written about the experience. It's not so much detailed history about these paths.
No.
It's more my emotional response and the feelings and the sensations you have walking along these paths. And yeah, the people in the group have really encouraged me.
So in Edinburgh Outdoors first, we're doing a dual location podcast today. So I'm back meeting Charlie again, and we're in St Mark's Park, which is, I think, Charlie, it used to be a flour mill.
Yeah,
I
I think
read.
Chancellor Mill was somewhere around here, yeah.
Yeah, and it's now a lovely park.
Yeah, I thought a lot of it, I think, is sort of reclaimed land to a certain extent.
And it's nice, and all the railway paths seem to diverge and meet here, which must be because it was an industrial area. And so we've been walking through some nice autumn leaves, and we're just off to discover the Powderhall railway line. I'm looking forward to this though. So we turned off the main path there,
Yeah, to
and
this.
down this little thing, and this takes us to the railway, does it?
Yeah, well, I think this is like a buffer zone, because I think the railway obviously originally went all the way down to Granton. Yeah, I think it was around mid-80s or something, this sort of buffer zone was introduced. And then, because this railway was then just used to service the Powderhall refuse depot, as it were.
So now it's a woodland path, but then suddenly there's a railway in there.
You can hear the river. So that's a little shortcut back onto the river.
Following the railway line, it goes all the way down. It goes down, and does it meet the East Coast Main Line, or the lines going into Waverley, doesn't it?
Yeah, past Meadowbank and that sort of area. So I think that final section would need to be kept alive, as it were, but this section is definitely out of use now.
And there are the buffers, wow.
Because the main path, railway path, sort of comes under this section at some point. So I always looked up and went, what's within those fences? What's there? So I did try and see how I could access it, and then you can here, and then there's another access point at the other end, which takes you to the other side of the river. So that bit there is a bridge. But coming here, I do see quite a lot of people here, which in a sense makes me feel safer.
You know, when they say don't play on the railway, that's about trains. This is just something that you can come and have a look at. See, it's still got the screens in the bottom wall. All the railway lines are crossing each other, so when this was fully functioning industry, there must have been trains crisscrossing.
Yeah, the main pathway is or the remnants of Powderhall Station. And
You can see it from Broughton Road, can't you? There's a boarded up
Yep.
bit that's the entrance.
Yeah, and actually I found a near neighbour of mine has actually written quite an extensive article on this.
I read your article, which was really interesting, and that was saying how it was being used for quite a long time. I think the first thing we should say is that we've just done something a bit naughty, so we wouldn't encourage everybody to climb onto railway lines, because it might not be in their best safety. But there was no train going to come down to catch us.
But yeah,
It's a short section which is used as a cut-through by a lot of people. The railway path I thought was amazing because it was completely surrounded by industrial fencing, obviously meant to stop us getting in there. But when we climbed into it, and the track was still there, and the sleepers were still there, and it ran into another fence somewhere, but it just felt very much like it was a railway line that was taking us on a journey. I thought it was fantastic. So let's hope the campaign keeps going and that they open it as another path.
because at the moment it would be like macheting your way through a jungle.
Yes.
But
It wouldn't be very easy to walk at the
it
moment,
wouldn't.
would it?
But you can see the potential there.
Well, you only have to look at these paths, which
Yeah.
look amazing.
So yeah, I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that comes into use.
So just talking about the Powderhall Line one more time, just out of interest really, is that you wrote an article which was on the Broughton Spurtle website, and I'll put a link to that.
Yeah, I've also actually done another version of it. As I said, talking about my writing group, so I did like a polished, a more literary version, which is more about imagining the future, walking along that path. And then on the way to meet you yesterday, I mentioned it was on the 22 bus, and that takes you past the new section of pathway new connection that's being forged at Russell Road. So connecting the Roseburn path with Fountain Bridge, basically, so you can meet the canal. So that's going to be a really useful connecting point.
Are there times in your life that the outdoors has helped you, when it's been particularly helpful to you?
I think just in general, getting out always brings benefits. I feel every time I return after some sort of walk, I feel the benefit and feel that was a good idea, even if it's dank weather, dreary days. But I can certainly think of a specific time 6-7 years ago, I suppose, at a low ebb, at work, personally, things were, not going well. And I definitely felt that need to escape. Didn't want to stay indoors. And the paths really, the railway paths in particular, came into their own then. I was just exploring them in detail for the first time then. But the railway paths felt like they were warm and inviting in a sense, and sort of embracing. They were in sheltered places, surrounded by trees. There's something welcoming about them compared to maybe going for a walk in the wilderness or some rugged shoreline where you feel you're sort of on the edge somehow. Walking along these paths was much more welcoming, and the fact that they always draw you back into town feels like you're being brought back.
Well, I guess, and also they were all built to take something somewhere, so they're all a journey. So I guess it takes you on a journey, and they do say if you walk through a labyrinth when you're feeling low, that it can really help you, or like a mini pilgrimage or something. So I guess that was helpful too, in that it took you through in a journey, in a direction.
Yeah, and just the ease of walking along these paths as well meant I must have covered long distances at that time, just fueled by whatever I was going through at the time. But yeah, that's definitely a time when I really felt the benefit of those.
I know what you mean. I find it really helps you think something through, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
And the changing nature of the seasons as well reminds you that there is a renewal and there's a change, and and that helps as well.
Yeah, because in my childhood, we spent a lot of time picking blackberries. So I always think about the seasons in terms of seeing the blackberries growing. Are they ready yet? And then now, November, there's still a few lingering, but then the sense of some dying. Yeah. And then another thing, often walking these paths, wild garlic, that smell reminds me the start of the new year.
And what was your inspiration to walk? You said as a child you walked.
Yeah, I think that definitely. And I'm inspired definitely. One thing my dad left me was his mountaineering and walking journal, which he kept after he moved to Scotland in the mid-70s. He'd done walking before, but he really fell in love with the Scottish landscapes, and he joined, I think it was the Ptarmigan Mountaineering Club, and became leading members at one time. And they sort of had weekly visits out. And these are recorded in his journal, the sort of details, the escapades, the near disasters, 2 or 3 times, very close to losing members. Lost the mist descending on sort of steep places, Anakiga and all these sort of risky spots.
That's risky on a good day.
Yeah. No, I think he often writes reflections. The sort of initial post or the initial description of the walk is pretty detailed, matter-of-fact stuff, but then he often goes back and writes little reflections like, what an idiotic thing to do. Why were people out on this ill-prepared? We could have easily had a disaster. So
we've all done it at some point.
So I think it was a sort of learning experience for him. He used it, I think, in some of his sort of training work later on. But that's, the wonderful thing to have records of these things. It's beautifully illustrated and all that sort of stuff.
And you're doing your writing, and you're writing about paths and hidden places. And you're going to keep doing that, is that right?
Definitely. As I say, partly with encouragement from the writing group I'm involved in. But it's been an interesting experience, because one of the members is a counsellor and interested in psychotherapy and so on. She's been interested in what our individual writing has revealed. But yeah, definitely I will write more about the walks, partly just to illustrate the interesting walks that I've discovered even over the last few years, which are surprising to me. Well, I suppose the writing I've done about these walks, for me it's like a release, because I do a lot of writing which I need, it's sort of academic writing or professional writing, where I need to be precise and need to have supportive evidence for things and need logical argumentation in them. But these pieces about the walks, I can let my brain free, imagining paths might be opening in the future.
So something like the discovery you're making that, obviously we're not encouraging people to walk down railway tracks, but just all these lovely intertwining railway paths here, which are obviously well known because they're being used. But it's nice to see people finding different things.
I feel it's unpeeling different aspects of Edinburgh. I think we discussed before, concerns about over-tourism, and you do see it in certain sections of the city, and you do sometimes just wish people went a little bit off the beaten path, because even when Edinburgh is jam-packed at certain spots, you're only usually about 100 metres away from something relatively quiet and interesting.
Well, like the closes off the Royal Mile. There's some lovely little gardens off the Royal Mile as well.
Yeah, Dunbar Close and all those.
Yeah, which are really nice. And if thinking about this and encouraging people to go to places they wouldn't normally go, if you were going to give us a couple of recommendations of places to go and discover that people might not have known about, where would you say?
One I discovered quite recently, my partner works in the Old Town, and during the Fringe she's absolutely desperate to get out and escape.
I can
have no
understand
interest
that.
in it. It's not for her. So this year she gave me the task of finding spots that we could explore during August, get away, that were reachable maybe by bus. So one we found, which I must have had an awareness and must have crossed over by bus at some point, was the Birdie House Burn Walk, which was just a fantastic discovery. It's like people obviously celebrate the Water of Lee, the Almond River Walk and so on, but this little burn is that cliche hidden gem. The locals, it's obviously well used and it's well tarmacked, but it's just this fantastic thing that I very rarely hear mentioned in any guidebook to walks or even hidden Edinburgh, all these sort of things. And Ellen's Glen is a beautiful little spot, a poor man's Dean Village in some sense, of like one of these unexpected little historic nooks. Really didn't expect it in that area. I suppose it's in general an unfashionable area of the city.
Yeah, no, it's not one where many people go, but actually that is a lovely road, and I think those burns are really nice as well. What's the other place that you suggested?
Was the Frigate Burn. So that's a nice walkway basically from Duddingston to the outskirts of Portobello. And again, it's just very gentle little burn trickling past. A lovely little spot, and then ends up in a small loch, pond with the park. And I think that's well used by people from Portobello, but it's a place I suppose I was aware of at some level, but had not actually, until you go and actually experience it, discover it's quite an extensive section of walkway there. Yeah, and then connecting to Braidburn Valley, you've then got the Cockmile Lane path, which takes you through another unfashionable area, Oxgangs. But again, it's a lovely little section. Then you can then follow that up to Swanston, because it's a bridge over the bypass. So again, it's like coming to the city almost surreptitiously.
And where's your favourite part of the city? Because we ask everyone this in the hope that we are giving people ideas. Where's your favourite bit of the city?
So many to choose from, but I think the one that springs to mind is Blackford Glen. Again, I think I associate with childhood walks, and always when I imagine it, I always think of sunshine there. It's a very sheltered spot between Blackford Hill and the Braid Hills, and you have the Hermitage. It's basically the extension of the Hermitage, but the Hermitage is obviously a dense woodland, which is beautiful, but it can be a bit dark, gloomy, chilly, and then you come out past, I think it's the Scouts Bridge, and then you come into the rather open, sheltered spot. And I always think of the burn there. Really, the sunshine sort of hitting the burn, beautiful way, and very gentle and very calm. And I think a lot of people obviously visit the Hermitage, but maybe fewer go beyond.
I think yesterday we mentioned Agassiz Rock.
Yeah, so it's important for sort of the history of geology. And also, as with so many of the good path walks, there's so many options. You can continue through to Liberton, Cameron Toll, or you can go up the Braids, which I sometimes feel the Braids is possibly a underrated spot.
Yeah, don't tell everyone about it. Because I go up the Braids, not quite most days, but probably several days a week. And certainly during lockdown, I was up there every day. And I love the Braids, and I think it's a fantastic viewpoint. And particularly when you're up above the golf course, it's really wild and lovely. But I don't want everyone going.
Actually, I was up at the very top bit. I think there's the highest point of the Braids, near there. So I was up there 6 months ago or so, and I was reminded some of the old Braids 2 golf course was put out of commission, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago. I think it was deemed to be too eccentric and weird for modern equipment. But it brought back incredibly strong memories of me playing there as a youth, playing with my dad. There's one particular hole, I think it was maybe the third hole of the old Braids 2, which was over a little valley. As a small boy, I would struggle to get it across. So it was like a great achievement to actually get it across onto the green.
And that hole's gone now, has it?
Yeah, but you can still see it if you have, like myself, memories of it. The land is still there.
Well, thank you, Charlie. That's not been what I was expecting at all. And I certainly didn't think that we were going to be climbing over railway tracks. And we should tell people not to do anything dangerous when they're out and about. But I've really enjoyed it. And you've got me obsessed now with all the things I want to do. And where we're sitting at the moment is a really lovely park. People going by all the time, lots of dogs and lovely autumn trees.
He agrees.
Give up. If you've enjoyed the Edinburgh Outdoors podcast, please rate us on your podcast app and leave a review. And don't forget to tell your friends and colleagues about it too. If you know of an outdoor space in or around Edinburgh that might like to be featured, you can get in touch by email, Instagram or TikTok.